Welcome to The Warp. I'm Jack Rita. I'm the designer of Cosmic Odyssey, which is the 7th expansion for Cosmic Encounter. And among other things, it does include a campaign mode. It expands a lot of the variants from the previous expansions in base game, like technology, hazards, space stations. And it also adds some new variants. And that's one of the things I'm going to talk about in this video. We're going to be talking about evolution cards. So evolutions is something brand new to Cosmic Encounter. It's never been in part of any other edition previously. And it makes your ship resources even more important. And Cosmic Encounter is a game where you have two major resources in the game. You have ships and you have cards. And cards have traditionally always been considered more important, more valuable to the players. And I wanted to find a way to make the ships more important to how the game progresses. And that's how evolutions were born. Now, this particular deck is actually a custom deck that I had made. It looks very much like the one that you can get in Odyssey, so definitely get it. The only difference is that I have added a little summary line here at the top there, just so that at a glance, players around the table have a better sense of which evolution is which. That's really the only difference. I have a few new ones that I have added to my deck, so it's a little bit different. But other than that, this is something that's in Cosmic Odyssey. You should definitely try it out, and I'll explain how it works and what it does and why I like it. So at the start of the game, you're going to draw 4 evolution cards at random, and you're going to place them face up somewhere on the table within reach of everyone. And during every regroup, players can add a ship from one of their colonies or your ship that you're retrieving from the warp if you're the offense, and place it on or next to one of these face-up evolutions. It's very similar to researching technology, but in this case, it's something everybody has access to, and it's all public, so you know what people are putting their ships next to. And you're going to go in player order, so the offense will place their ship first if it matters. Some players, they're not going to care what the other players are doing. They know exactly what they want to do, so they can just do that. But if it does matter, you're going to go clockwise, starting with the offense, placing your ship. If you have ships already by an evolution, researching evolution, or evolving, as we say, you can, instead of adding one, you can move one from one of the evolutions to a different one. So what do the evolutions do? Well, there's really 2 types of evolutions. There's ones that turn on things that normally you can do in the game, but in the start of a game with evolutions, you actually can't do them. And the other one is just an added effect that you can trigger. So let's take a look at the first kind. I've got a couple here. You'll see that on the card, it's got different stages, and it's based on the number of ships you have evolving. So these that have a 0 mean it's some effect that normally you can do that you take for granted in Cosmic Encounter, but actually now you can't do it until you start putting some ships on there. So this one is called Pyrology, and it's play flares. If you have 0 ships by Pyrology, you cannot play flare cards. And you get your starting hand at the beginning of the game. If you don't have any flares, then evolving Pyrology is not a high priority. Maybe later on you'll need to do it. But if you do have flares and you want to play them, then you're going to need to have at least one ship next to that. And here it says no restrictions. And the one in the game will say it just says no effect, but it's the same thing. Now, once you have 2 or 3 ships on here, there's actually a new effect here. And that's with this one, when you play your alien's flare, you can use either the wild or the super ability. And normally you can't do that. If you have your own flare, you can only use the super. If you wanted to use the wild effect, you'd actually have to cosmic zap yourself or have lost your alien's power by not having enough home colonies. But now, if you just put down 2 ships by Pyrology over the course of 2 encounters, you have that ability, which of course you're only going to do if you have your flare. However, if you'll notice down here, once you have 4 ships, well, in addition to being able to do the above, after another player plays a flare, you may draw a flare from the flare deck. So you're actually getting more flares. So depending on which 4 evolutions are in the game, you suddenly have some more options and incentives about things you want to be able to do in the game. Let's take a different example. This one's called Momentum Drive, and this is in order to have a second encounter. So normally in the game, when you win your first encounter as the offense, you get to have a second encounter, provided you have at least 1 encounter card. Well, here, if you have no ships evolving your Momentum Drive, then you just can't have a second encounter. You need to have at least 1 or 2 ships on there. And furthermore, once you have 3 ships on here as the offense, during the planning phase, if you do not have an encounter card in your hand, your turn does not end. Discard your hand and draw a new one. And again, normally that is not something you can do. If after the start of turn, you run out of encounter cards, then your turn is over. And that's too bad for you. But now, if you're looking at your hand and you're saying, all right, I don't have that many encounter cards. I have 1. I'm going to be able to have 1 encounter. I need to make sure that by the time my turn comes up, I've got 3 ships in evolving my momentum drive. And that way, once I use that one, I'll be able to have a second encounter if it's successful. So in some cases, you can plan ahead because, again, every regroup, you're able to add a ship to one of these 4 evolutions. Now let's talk about the other type. The other type doesn't turn on something that normally you can do. It doesn't have any zeros. It just has a number, and it gives you just a new effect that you can do. So this one's called Hyperspace Portcullis. And once you've got 2 ships on here, when you draw Destiny, you may draw 2 Destiny cards. You can choose one to encounter and place the other at the bottom of the Destiny deck. So again, once you are looking ahead to see, all right, how long till I become the offense, if you've got a few turns before it gets there, you don't necessarily have to research this right away. But once your turn is coming up, especially if you're in a game where there are certain players that maybe you don't want to encounter, you'd like to have some options, this might be worth your while. The other one we'll take a look at here is called Turbo Cannon. So this one just says 2+ ships. So as long as you have 2 ships on here, this is an active effect. As a main player, add the number of your ships on this evolution to your side's total. So that's what the plus is. If you've got 5 of your ships on there, it's like having a reinforcement +5 that you'll be able to use. Now, anytime that you want to add ships to an encounter, or you need them for some other effect, you can take the ships from the evolutions. They're not trapped there. You just can't say, all right, I allied with the defense there and we won, and now I'm going to put my 3 ships from that encounter all onto an evolution. You can't do that. It's only during the regroup and you're adding in 1 ship, or you're moving one from one evolution to another one. But again, they can come off of the evolutions if you need to. So if you're going for a big colony there and you have the turbo cannon and you've been researching it for the several encounters in a row, and you're like, oh, I've got a +6 and now I'm having another encounter, I'm going to take some of those ships away, or my turn is over and maybe I don't really need them that much. So there's a lot of interesting effects. I'll give you a couple of other examples. Aviation here. If you have no ships on aviation, you can't be an ally. Once you have 1 ship, you can ally, but your ship limit is 1. 2 or 3 ships doing aviation has no restrictions. And once you have 4 ships on here as an ally, your ship limit is increased by 1. So certain aliens, like the new Macron, which is actually Micron, each of the ships is worth 2 for encounter totals, not for evolutions. But being able to bring 5 ships would be nice. Coordination tactics, in a similar vein, allows you to invite allies. So no ships means you can't invite anyone. If you have 1 ship, you can invite 1 player. 2 or 3 ships, you have no restrictions. And once you're at 4, you have a new effect, which is after encounter cards are revealed, your allies may send additional ships into the encounter up to their normal ship limit. So they could start off by allying with just 1 ship or maybe 2. And if it turns out, oh, you know what, it's in the reveal phase, we're going to need some more ships, they can bring those ships in there. And you've got a lot of other things like being able to draw a full hand, being able to play reinforcements, retrieving ships from the warp, playing artifacts, and stuff like that. So it's a really interesting, I'm biased, I think it's very interesting addition to the game. It does make those ship resources critical. And you have to start thinking ahead of like, all right, I know I'm going to want to invite allies because I'm starting off the game as the offense. So that's going to be the thing that I evolve first. Becoming an ally, not critical for me on my first turn, but once my turn is over, I'm going to want to be an ally. So I'll have to start putting some ship resources into that evolution. And it just depends on what's in the game. You could have a game where none of the effects are turned off. Everything is just a bonus. And you can pick and choose accordingly. But when you have a game where like, oh, there's certain things that normally we can always do, but now we can't unless we have the ships, And now you're trying to evolve these different effects as well as maintain a certain number of ships on your foreign colonies as well as your home colonies. And you've got aliens in the game like Shadow or zapping ships. It can be even more just bonkers than a normal game of Cosmic. I can't believe that anyone could even say that, but it's true. So that's how evolutions work. Let me know what you think of this variant. If you haven't tried it out, or if you have tried it out, I want to know what you thought of that in your games. How did it affect things? What sorts of insane situations came up? And let me know if you have ideas for new evolutions. I'm always looking to add some extra cards to my game, as you probably have figured out by now, as well as in TTS, because we like to play in TTS a lot, and we're able to bring in a lot of custom content into our TTS games there as well. So thanks for watching, and hope you'll watch another one.